You know, it's so funny because I spent how many years teaching activism to people, and now I'm completely blank. No,
we're not taught Black history about the Black Muslims that contributed. You know, so as a Black Muslim, you have to like do extra work and find your own community and really find solidarity elsewhere, in my experience.
Muslim, Christians, whatever, of my generation, like I said, that doesn't feel that pain and see the need that they need to get up and do something is selfishness. Because you think you are not affected?
There's a need to be able to say, you know, there are Black Muslims and they have a history, and their history may be different from the history of other Muslims.
When we look at the first races, they actually say Shaitan, the devil, was the first racist. So really let that marinate.
Activism, I think, is just fighting for whatever you believe in, fighting for any and everyone, fighting for those that can't fight for themselves, fighting for those that are underrepresented, fighting for those that are being oppressed.
Activism is being vocal when sometimes it's difficult to be vocal. Activism is believing in justice and standing for something and committing to that thing that you stand by, and not shutting down just because you're afraid of the consequences.
Activism is not sitting down and saying injustice prevail.
It's advocating for inclusivity. It's advocating for equity.
Relating back to Islam, it's forbidding what is wrong and enjoying what is right. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us so many times. He said, help the oppressor and the oppressee. How do you help the oppressor? By telling them what they are doing is wrong. And I think that is a service to humanity. That is activism. Service to humanity, regardless of the color, the background, your ethnicity, your religion, regardless of your sexual orientation as well.
I think that activism comes in many different forms.
Yes, definitely.
You know, there's silent protest, there's lobbying, there's just so many things that you can do. There's art.
Any field that you enter, it is your duty to be an activist, no matter what field you are in, because every institution within this country is founded by anti-Blackness.
And I feel like a common thing that, like, when you hear activism, it's like, you know, protesting in the streets, and that is one way that people can go about bringing about change. But I think it's also important to mention that it's not the only way to bring about change.
There's a lot going on. When we think about Black lives,
there's a lot going on in today's world about, you know, Black Lives Matter and, you know, activism and people speaking out.
Police brutality.
What's going on in this country with the recent deaths of the Breonna Taylors, the Ahmaud Arbery's, the George Floyd, it's not new, you know. It's been happening since the beginning of this country.
I think people are getting tired and people are doing whatever needs to be done to address things that have been going on for how long? Over centuries.
The list continues to go on, and it's to the point where I can't even be on social media due to the trauma that I know is entering into my system.
Up until the past few weeks, I think I kind of became desensitized. So, like, you know, sometimes like I would see things and I'm just like, you know, just another person got killed.
Almost.
But I think something did definitely change, because I think this time, obviously with the brutal murder of George Floyd, I think it sparked something in a lot of people.
I think what's most heartbreaking about it is that some people still don't see it as being wrong. It took me a really long time to calm down. I've been angry for weeks and trying to process my own emotions and my own feelings.
It's like weird because, you know, you want people to be like, oh, you know, we need to make change or we need to do all this stuff. But it was like, y'all, like, we didn't start existing today. Black people was here for a long time, and now all these companies want to be like, oh, you know. And I mean, like, yes, like, obviously they have to say something, but it's like, it's sad that
but that's the thing,
it's come to this point where it's like, and even some of these people that are claiming to be for the people, supporting
Performative activism.
Yeah, performing
A black screen.
that is one activism.
I've seen people who just
here.
have posted a black screen and that's it.
That's it.
That's not enough for me.
I would say my biggest thing is to always check yourself, right? Because like a lot of us, you know, we talk about these things and we fight against them, but some of these things happen in our own houses, in our own homes. You can't come out in the world and fight against this if you're letting these things happen in your own home. I saw this quote one time. It was like, once I became more enlightened and educated, I started to notice the ignorance from everyone around me, right? Like, you have to understand that your family, your friends are not above it. Like they you know, sometimes they can be problematic, and you have to call them out on that. Being truthful about the situation is really the best way to go about it.
We, the generation of today, we said that this thing has been happening over like in the 18th century. We are the older one, probably from 40, 50 of age, people of my age, should be in the forefront. Because those people that fought for it, the little they are able to gain is what we are enjoying today. We should not be a parasite and just enjoy it. So, well, it doesn't matter.
You cannot shout that you are for Black Lives Matter if you are not advocating for Black queer people, if you're not advocating for Black Muslims, if you're not advocating for Black women, period.
That the Black Americans, they are the ones that suffer all this persecution before we came. We came, then we are now enjoying their hard labor. We are enjoying all the pain that they got through. And I will challenge my fellow immigrants to this country. I will challenge them. We don't have any moral right to call them being lazy. We don't have any moral right to call them names that some people are calling them, which I don't want to mention on this recording. It is wrong. They are human beings. We cannot condemn and say, well, you know, they don't want to do anything. Because we come from other countries, because we had that background that we know that education is important, and then we are given a little bit fair ground. Ask your counterparts that did medicine in this country. They are still paying. They are still paying their debt. But you don't have any debt behind you. You're enjoying the life. And when anything gets rosy for you, you move away from your Nigerian or Ghanaian or Liberian or African community, go to the white neighborhood because you want to live a better life. We should wake up.
Like, even though we are, you know, constantly being impressed by the system, sometimes we tend to do some things to ourselves, or to, like, you know, for example, like our Black women, like the way we tend to treat them, or the way we tend to act towards them, right? Like we are currently getting oppressed ourselves, but we're oppressing them at the same time. Or for example, like people who are of lighter skin, like know that you have privilege. Check yourself.
Sometimes I see on social media Black men feeling like Black women nag on them too much and that we hate on them too much, when it's no. Black men need to do more for Black women, period. We don't talk about what is going on with Black women. We don't talk about the rape and sexual assault that Black women are facing. We don't talk about the ways in which they're not believed. We don't talk about the different caricatures that Black women are perceived to be.
Does it have to be Oluwatoyin before we act? Does it have to be Nigerian before we act? Does it have to be Ghanaian before we act? Does it have to be Sophia, Miriam? Does it have to be a Muslim? Does she have to be a Muslim before we act? No. Human being is human being, regardless. Sometimes
in the Muslim community, there are certain groups that can, I don't want to generalize, but there are certain groups that are a little bit more silent on Black lives.
There are often occasions where I feel like I'll be talking to Muslims, and the terms that relate to being Black and Muslim, they don't like to talk about it. It's like a taboo topic. There was a group, it's a listserv, and you know, they were talking about going to protest, and it was almost like they were afraid, like terrified to go out and protest. Mind you, we're protesting for Black lives. Black Lives Matter. And to me, this is my opinion, they were going to protest for the sake of protesting without acknowledging what they were protesting for. So at one point I said, you know, as a Black Muslim, it means a lot that the Muslim community is coming out to go and protest issues that relate to Black people. Silence, you know? I was like, you know, I just want to thank you all for really taking in, you know, this issue and recognizing that it's not just a Black issue, it's a Muslim issue, it's an everybody issue. Silence. They went on and on about the protest itself and about how police take off hijabs and that we need to be careful and bring an extra hijab and all this kind of stuff. And I think the point was missed. I think being Muslim has its own set of challenges in this country. You're labeled as a terrorist, and we fight our own battles. Being Black and Muslim is 10 times that. And it's unfortunate that other Muslims aren't able to use the experiences that they have in being connected with terrorism and terrorists, and use that as a connection point to Black Muslims and see that they're being crucified every day because of their skin color.
And I think what they tend to forget is Arab populations are not the only Muslim population, are not the majority Muslim population either. Islamic history is rooted in Africa. It's rooted in Black history. The first Muslim people in America were Black slaves.
The first Muslim martyr was actually a Black woman.
There you go. But you can't call yourself a Muslim and not fight for other fellow Muslims and not fight for other humans, period. I mean, in the Quran, it says that, no human is better than any other human. And in the Prophet's last sermon, every Muslim knows this. No Black person is more superior than a white person, more superior. There is no superiority in Islam. So why are people silent? What excuse have they given themselves? I don't know, but it's not valid.
Not just for a short period of time when the country all of a sudden labeled Muslims as bad. That wasn't always the case for Muslims, but it has always been the case for Black people. From day one, Black people have been murdered for no reason. With Muslims, events occurred in history that made people start targeting Muslims. I'm not saying that's justified, but a Black Muslim has been targeted because they're Black from day one. And for some reason, it's unfortunate that the Islam in people, the idea of peace, the idea of unity, the idea of solidarity in itself isn't enough for Muslims to identify with Black people and say, we are here with you. And we're not just going because we know that police also don't like Muslims, but we're going on your behalf because anything that they do to you, they're doing to us.
As a Muslim, you have a duty to fight for those who are getting oppressed. You have a duty to fight for yourself. Like, Islam is literally the religion for those who are vulnerable. You're supposed to be here, protect those who are vulnerable, and uplift those who are vulnerable.
Islam has always been about you fight for what you believe in. You fight for the person who, is being oppressed. That is the history. That is the I think about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I feel like it's frustrating when people quote the Prophet or they quote the Quran for stupid reasons. I would be like, I'm not judging anyone, but when it really comes time to take a stand and fight for what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what he believed in, what he fought for, I would be like.
The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has always been an activist.
This is treaty that he made called Hilaful Fudul. The Prophet ﷺ proposed an idea to make a treaty that anybody who came to Mecca as a traveler, whether a stranger or whatever, Muslim or non-Muslim, was protected. And the treaty literally says that we will stand by the oppressed as one strong hand until the oppressed is no longer oppressed. So you keep fighting until it's over, right? And he said as one strong hand, and you do whatever you have to do to make sure that those who are oppressed are no longer in that situation.
The Quran says, "Kuntum khayran ummatin ukhrijat lin-nas ta'muruna bil-ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkar." Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's a command, said, "Let there arise among you a group of people, calling people to goodness and refraining them from evil." So anywhere there is injustice, there is inequity, a Muslim is expected to stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. The Prophet ﷺ equally told us, if you see something of dissatisfaction, the way you will change it is to speak out against it, change it by your hand, or at least let your heart desist it.
And just in general, Islam really just talks about not using your power in a selfish way to to just oppress those who are vulnerable.
So a Muslim should be involved in the affairs of his community. Again, if you look at all the ibadats that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to be engaged in, our salat, Allah did not say just continue to pray individually in your house. It's at a communal level so that you know what's going on with other people. The same thing happens in the case of Ramadan. From Ramadan, we after the end of you fasting individually in your house, you are supposed to give zakatul fitri for those who do not have. So how do you get to know all those people if you are not active in the society? For a Muslim, you have to be active. You need to know what's going on with other families, with other individuals.
If you're not an activist, in this day and age, with everything that's going on, you really need to look at your Islam and understand that today, given your religion and your belief and your history, speaks to exactly what you need to be doing right now in the midst of people being killed for no reason.
Even some people that you find your way to this country by any means necessary, legal or illegal, you got your legal status, one way or the other. You are citizen. A lot of us did not even find it as a moral responsibility to vote. To vote. We sit down at home and say it doesn't matter. If it doesn't matter to the people in 18th century, in the early 19th century, we will not be here today. I will not have the opportunity that I'm having here today. And our generation that we have here will not have the opportunity they are supposed to have tomorrow.
Vote. Oh my gosh. It's sad that in 2020 we still have to remind people how important it is to vote. But my goodness, local elections are really important. It's important to know the candidates. It's important to be active, to be at the table, to do your research. It's the only way change is ever going to happen. And I really pray that those who still believe that it's a non-issue, I really hope that somehow, some way, they become enlightened. And I pray that it's not something drastic that has to happen to them before they can realize that there's a connection between all people.
It's a service to call for everybody to get up, buckle your belt, get up, and act. Thank you.